The clock on the wall hit 3 a.m., the exact second the safe mechanism engaged. Elias held his breath, his fingertips tracing the cold steel dial as it clicked into place. He pulled the heavy handle. It swung open without resistance. He reached inside, fingers searching for the cold weight of diamonds, but his hand brushed against glossy paper. He pulled a stack of Polaroids into the dim light. His pulse spiked. The photos showed his own bedroom. They showed him sleeping in his own bed, taken from a vantage point high above the mattress. His hands began to shake, a violent, uncontrollable tremor that sent the photos scattering across the floor. He dropped to his knees, scrambling to gather them. But his eyes locked onto a shot of his own face in deep sleep. The silence of the office shattered. A heavy, resounding thud echoed through the room as the steel door slammed shut. He scrambled up, lunging for the handle, but it did not move. He yanked it, his grip slipping on the cold metal. It was locked. He was no longer a thief. He was something trapped. A muffled voice crackled through the intercom, cutting through the silence like a jagged blade. It recited his home address, every digit precise and cold. Elias froze, his back pressing against the unyielding steel of the door. He turned, scanned the room, and bolted toward the window. He grabbed the frame, intending to smash the glass, but his fingers hit cold, solid resistance. Thick iron bars had been welded to the window frame, a grid of black metal that had not been there when he entered the building. He shook them, but they were immovable, anchored deep into the wall. A low hum filled the office. He looked up. A security camera in the corner swiveled, its red lens fixing directly onto his eyes. He grabbed a heavy brass paperweight from the desk and hurled it. The device shattered, glass spraying the floor. But a second camera hidden behind the bookshelf immediately clicked, tracking his movement with mechanical precision. He backed away, his gaze falling to the window. Outside, the streetlights were flickering. Not randomly. They pulsed in a rhythmic, steady beat. He pressed a hand to his chest, feeling his heart hammer against his ribs. The lights pulsed again, one for one. He was not just trapped. He was being measured. Panic surged, white-hot and blinding. Elias shoved the heavy mahogany desk against the door, jamming it into the frame with a grunt of exertion. He did not stop there. He lunged for the wall panel, fingers clawing at the plastic casing until he ripped it from the plaster. He grabbed the exposed wires and yanked. Sparks erupted, a shower of molten gold that illuminated the room in jagged, flickering bursts. Each flash revealed the office in sharp, frozen segments, the scattered photos, the broken glass, the swiveling lens. Then, silence. The room plunged into absolute, crushing darkness. Elias stood trembling, his breath coming in shallow, ragged gasps. A faint, steady glow appeared on his chest, a crimson laser dot. It flickered once, then began to move, tracing a slow, deliberate line from his heart up to his throat. He stopped moving. He stopped breathing. He pressed his back against the wall, eyes wide, watching the point of light burn into his skin. A soft sliding sound broke the tension. A paper slid under the steel door and tore the paper open. In the dim ambient light, he read the words, "You were never the one in control." Above him, the ceiling tiles groaned and shifted. A hidden compartment descended, metallic and cold, but Elias turned his back on it. He lunged for the door handle, twisting and yanking until the skin on his knuckles broke and blood slicked the brass. It remained immovable. The room temperature plummeted. His exhales turned into thick, visible mist. Then, the mechanical locks disengaged with a sharp, synchronized click. The heavy door creaked open just an inch. Elias shoved it wide. Letter opener held low, and stepped into the hallway. He stopped dead, left and right. The corridor stretched into a blur of identical doors, an infinite sequence of thresholds. He chose the third on the left and kicked it open. He stumbled inside, expecting another trap, but froze. He was in his own living room. He watched his past self walk through the front door, oblivious and calm. Elias tried to shout, but his throat seized, producing only a dry rattle. The past Elias sat on the sofa, reached for the remote, and clicked the television on. The screen flickered to life, showing a live feed of the very room where he stood. He saw his own terrified face staring back at him from the glass. Elias stared at the screen. The image of his own face was not a reflection. It was a mirror of his current terror, frozen in time. He understood then that the walls, the corridor, and the doors were merely gears in a mechanism that fed upon his fear. The cycle had no beginning, and it would have no end. He walked toward the television, his boots silent on the floor. He raised his hand, trembling, and pressed his palm against the surface of the screen. Instead of solid glass, he felt a cold, viscous pull, as if he were reaching into a pool of still water. He stepped forward, the world warped, bending around his limbs like light through a lens. He tumbled through the static, the sound of rushing air filling his ears. He hit the floor hard, the impact jarring his teeth. He looked up. The office was back to its original state. The desk was in the center of the room. The air was still. The clock on the wall hummed with a steady, mechanical rhythm. He looked toward the safe in the corner. His heart hammered against his ribs as he watched the dial spin on its own. With a sharp, final click, the safe door swung open at exactly 3 a.m.